Hi, everybody, and welcome to ZETA's February Tech Talk, AI for Good. I'm José, President and CEO of ZETA. Super excited to lead today's conversation on how artificial intelligence is shaping business, economic development, and global problem solving. AI is no longer just a futuristic concept, it's actively changing industries, decision-making, and even how we tackle social challenges, like homelessness, for example. But are we actually using AI in ways that make a difference? And what do business leaders see happening up close? To explore these questions, we have two outstanding speakers with us today, both of whom bring decades of leadership in business, economic strategy, and entrepreneurship to the conversation. Our first speaker is Mark L. Madrid, a powerhouse in economic leadership and small business development. Mark is the former Associate Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, where he played a critical role in driving entrepreneurship and small business resilience nationwide. He is also the CEO of his own firm, an advisor to corporate and nonprofit boards, and a national leader in economic inclusion. Throughout his career, Mark has worked at the intersection of business and policy, focusing on how we create stronger economic opportunities for underserved communities. He also serves on ZETA's advisory board, helping us navigate how Gen Z can play a leadership role in the future of tech and business. Mark brings a wealth of experience in seeing how AI is actually being used in economic systems today. Looking forward to the conversation, Mark. Joining us as well is Kevin Johns, an expert in urban economic development and CEO of Future Economies, LLC. Kevin has spent decades helping cities and regions drive sustainable economic growth, and his work has had a direct impact on job creation, workforce development, and entrepreneurship strategies. He is one of the authors, alongside Mark, of Interview with AI Guidebook 2, How Do We Eliminate Homelessness? A book that explores how AI can be used to tackle some of society's most persistent challenges. His research and real-world experience give him a unique perspective on how AI is reshaping public policy and economic mobility. Kevin's expertise is invaluable as we discuss whether AI is truly helping solve issues like homelessness, or if we need to rethink how we use AI-driven insights in some of these areas. Mark, Kevin, thank you both for being here. I'm going to jump right into it here so we can get the conversation going, talking about AI. We're going to break it down into a few sections just so we can keep some of these topics going throughout the conversation in a more fluid way. First, I want to dive into a reality check on AI. I think it's really important. AI is everywhere in business, shaping strategy, automating tasks, driving major investments. But is it actually delivering value, or are we just chasing the hype? You all co-authored this book, Interview with AI Guidebook 2, How Do We Eliminate Homelessness, using AI as part of the research and writing process. AI is projected to grow from an $86.9 billion industry in 2022 to a $407 billion industry by 2027. With over 14,700 AI startups in the US, based on your experience, does AI actually make research problem solving easier, or is it still too rough to replace human expertise? I don't know which one of you wants to start with that big question, but happy to pass it along to either of you.
Jose, thank you for inviting us. This is such a great discussion. And Mark's brilliant, so I'm sure he's going to solve all the problems.
Go right ahead, Kevin, because it's an honor to be here. I'll start off with Kevin because he is actually the author of this wonderful book, and I came along as a collaborator. And so we're truly, truly excited to be here with the force, Gen Z, who we have confidence is going to not only unite this country, but solve some major problems. Go ahead, Kevin, and then I'll follow up.
Well, yeah, thanks, Mark. Jose, I think this is like science fiction come true. Over the last few years, Mark and I had occasion to work with the Texas Advanced Computer Center. They've got a group of supercomputers that are competing with China on, you mentioned, on the quantum computing. and we had them host a new kind of software that would tell governments what the economic blind side of redevelopment was. So, this whole area of AI is moving forward fairly quick, and I think that we are staying on top of it. And in terms of economic development, it's never been used to do economic policy. It hasn't been used to look at things like what we're doing, trying to eliminate poverty and breaking it down, find out where it's fragmented, looking at thousands of databases, policies, finding out what the return on investment is, where is the best kind of bang for your buck. So I think everybody knows that the real money that's being made on AI right now is in medicine, logistics, the diagnostic tools that are using to discover drugs to get them to market fast. There was a really neat collaboration between IBM and the Scripps Research Institute that had a robot that could calculate 1 million drug combinations per year called Project Checkmate. That's the first time I've ever seen supercomputing AI used in a drug calculation in a real specific way to get markets charged up. But those are the two areas where I think businesses have created a whole different mindset.
And
I think that's go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on the integration and the hype of AI. So I think you were pointing at some of those topics and areas of concern or opportunity. And what I would say is that in scenarios where there is skin in the game, I think processes have to drive technology. So I'm in the world of entrepreneurship. So what I've seen with AI in terms of integration is if there's a baseline process or a standard operating procedure that AI has the opportunity to amplify and really save money, save time, save energy, reduce stress. But in the reverse, if there's not a process driving the technology, then vulnerabilities are exposed and amplified. So we like to say, Kevin, that you leverage AI as your intern, not your boss. In other words, you still got to bring your person to it. I think if we realize that, then it can be a game changer, as it is with addressing the world's most significant problems. And we're just getting started. I mean, Kevin and I will have another version on poverty and entrepreneurship coming up.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because to break that down even a little bit further, right? Like you all are saying, yes, it's an incredible tool that just, it adds such a different pace and a processing ability to data. And we're seeing those applications in medicine. I think we're seeing them in a few other fields. But you encapsulate it really well by saying it's still just, a really great intern. There's a human component there that we're still working with that is still important to bring as we're using some of these tools. And who knows, right? We were just talking about quantum before we started the webinar, as Zeta looks to get a little bit more involved in some of the quantum computing research and development going on in the US. And who knows, right? Like as we see some of that computing capacity add to AI, maybe we will see AI less as a really great, research fellow intern and see it more as a leader in some of those spaces to help us carve out additional questions, right? It's
phenomenal, the speed at which these things are moving forward. We're seeing in the defense departments, of course. At Georgia Tech, everybody hated Max Planck because he invented the quantum theories. But now the Chinese are using it for faster computers, faster AI. So I think we're entering kind of an exciting period, and it should be transformative for businesses. It should help businesses and young entrepreneurs really become wealthy quicker, to use their creativity and really advance the whole generation towards, I think, to be the strongest group, the strongest generation on the planet, if this works out well.
So you touch on something that I think is interesting, and it kind of leads me to my next question, which is industry investment, right? Economic opportunities to come, and whether there's a strong sense of legitimacy there, or if we're seeing something akin to the dot-com bubble, right? Or this a hype that maybe is not really going to follow through on the industry side. We have folks like Google who have committed over $100 billion in investment in AI development. And with investments like that, right, and some of the investments that we've seen now by collectives of companies in the U.S. pledging, I don't know the number off the top of my head, so I won't say it, but pledging even more, you do wonder, right? I think people wonder, is that really going to drive innovation, or is it a race? Is it just kind of an international race to build out the most beefed up infrastructure? And it sounds like there is real innovation and real industry opportunity there, not just for the bigger guys, but for individuals that are trying to be a part of new businesses that integrate AI in their day to day.
I think you zeroed in on it. Now I'll let Mark talk.
Yeah.
But money loves company, and so when somebody announces they're going to put $100 billion, entrepreneurs are going to gravitate to it. And so, yeah, the larger companies are going to succeed to a high degree in this hardball global marketplace. But I will tell you, the people in Atlanta are celebrating Elon Musk's announcement that his new AI Grok, if you could believe it, is going to have its data center in Atlanta. And so, it's big companies are starting, hundreds of thousands, I think, of smaller companies are going to find niche markets. And then it's all the suppliers to those companies. I didn't mean to interrupt, Mark.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. I mean, our tech giants need to be, they need to open the frontiers, right? But public-private partnerships, talk about inclusion, we all have to be involved. So we take a look at it from elementary schools to the connection points through academia and the community college network, private investment, and then the government investment has to be broken down between what's happening at the federal level. And we all know that municipalities are very, very important and critical when it comes to infrastructure and even leading into transportation and public works. So for the people, we got to make sure that the people rise up and are empowered. And that's only going to happen through public-private partnerships. It's all got to be cohesive. So there might be one on the leading edge of the frontier, but the others have to come along and play along as well to give access to all, because we have to think about deserts when it comes to broadband access in rural areas, and of course, underestimated communities. So that's the way I feel like we have to approach it if somebody gets ahead of the investment, especially with a large dollar generated volume.
Yeah, that's a very smart approach. Public-private partnerships got to be evolving because the government doesn't have enough money to do it on their own. This is the age of accountability. And so you want to entice, encourage, persuade the private sector to get involved, but with measurable outcomes, including the values of the community, which is a lot about the equality and getting wealth to Generation Z and empowering them to take leadership roles. That there's a return on investment that moves into the trillions of dollars once that happens. So public-private partnerships are a big part of it.
Yeah, I love that you all are touching on individual adoption, right? And what are the things that we need to put in place to promote that across all individuals, regardless of their background. And you mentioned broadband access, right? The fundamental access to the internet is such a core piece that goes overlooked when you're talking about, creating a ChatGPT account and being able to use it to help, start a business, right? Like a local business. Maybe you want to do like a yard cleaning business and you just want a little bit of help with some marketing material. You want some edge to that. That can't happen if you don't have access to the internet, right? Like that's the starting point which is wonderful. And I love that you bring it up because Zeta works on that. We have a strong platform around the need to make sure that we're modernizing and constantly building out our broadband infrastructure in the United States to keep up with all these technologies as they're getting built out. But I want to talk about individuals because the adoption numbers are so interesting to look at. And I have them right here. It's really hard to comprehend, but AI adoption is happening at record speeds, right? ChatGPT reached 100 million users in just its first 2 months. And compared to Instagram took 2.5 years to reach the same number of users, 100 million. Now, as of, I think this week, I saw something, ChatGPT has surpassed 400 million users. Those numbers are really incredible, right? I mean, that's more individuals than are in the United States. And what that makes me wonder is, who are not there, right? Who are the individuals that are not there yet? And of the folks that are there, do they really know how to use these tools productively, right? At Zeta, we've thought about maybe putting out more content that is like how-to guides to give people more exposure to how do you write prompts, how do you use these tools in different ways, right? To like facilitate a grocery list, to help create a workout routine, to color coordinate your outfits, like whatever it is, right? Build a business, right? Practice your pitch for like a company. How do you use it? So I'm curious to get your thoughts. Are individuals excelling, right? Are the individuals that are rapidly adopting these tools excelling, or is there still a lot of catch up for individuals to know how to use these tools and use them well?
Yeah, I think two things on the grand scale of it. Internet poverty is a huge deterrence to people even getting a taste of AI. Mark and I were looking at best practices, and Houston, Texas launched a regional economic plan to eliminate internet poverty per 600,000 low-income kids just 2 years ago. And so there are communities that are wising up to it. When you get to the individuals have to experiment a bit. I'm sure that a lot of the people who are going to tune in to your interview are either attorneys or have experience with attorneys. And anybody, especially city planners like me and probably Mark doing Chamber of Commerce work, but attorneys will ask you questions a lot of different ways. If they don't get the answer, they just keep probing. And that's how you have to approach AI as an individual. You have to ask it questions, and if you don't like the answer, you go, okay, ignore all of those government agencies you're talking about. What are the nonprofits doing? What are the faith-based organizations? Or give better instructions. But I think with experience, individuals can ramp up incredibly fast, especially since Gen Z is the most educated, connected generation on the planet. I don't think that's a challenge once they get access to it. But the greatest beneficiaries would be the millions of kids who are in poverty who do not have access to it on an individual basis.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we have to split the individual into personas, just like an advanced marketing campaign. And so depending on which group you fall in, I think those principles of like training for a marathon, if you're a runner, apply to AI as well. So as I'll just break it down to me and Kevin, we've accomplished everything that we've wanted to in our career. So this part of our life, it's like, we want to live our legacy now. We want to live our legacy now. How can we use everything that we've learned, including the accomplishments, the failures, working with the public, working with academia, working with the government? And so what we had to do, like we're taking our own prescription in crafting this masterpiece. I say masterpiece because it's just two guys wanting to do something for the world. And so we had to come into this methodology with multiple iterations to be very specific through our base of knowledge and asking AI and inputting several questions, very technical, so that we could assess the feedback and go multiple iterations. So it's the same with when you break it down to a small business, for instance. I come back to the process, and the skin in the game has to drive the technology. So I even experienced this yesterday with a dry cleaner owner. He said, am I pricing my product okay? And I can't turn around the orders anymore and offer a rush service. So the best I can do is a 3-day turnaround. How do I price that? Well, I said, what kind of process do you have for pricing? I mean, do you have an idea of what's being charged in the 4 zip code area? And he said, I do. I said, well, you have a process. I'm so excited. That can drive our iteration with AI. Let's sit down for about 20 minutes. He said, 20 minutes? Are you serious? I said, we can do this. We can do this. But if you came almost, blind to the awareness of your marketplace, and the reception of your own customer base, I said, then we would amplify your vulnerabilities. So what we came up with was a pricing strategy that worked. And he was overwhelmed with the time that it took. Now, I did, and I'll close with this. I said, look, this is a starting point, but we went 4 iterations, and now we need to apply your experience of knowing your customers and knowing this place because you grew up here. I said, combine the two, you're going to come up with something very comfortable. And I'm going to be right here as one of your clients that endorses it. So I think that breaks it down to the ground and to the evolution of this book.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about, and this section of questioning is about a reality check on AI, right? And how useful it is for business, for individuals, where we are, right, in our adoption and the application of it, how individuals are learning to use it. And I think you're totally right. Individuals bring a lot to these tools. These tools are there for you to amplify your own curiosity and help you in that initial starting point, or help you in revisions, or whatever it is that you're using that tool for. But ultimately you're driving the tool, right? Like, it's your tool, and so what you put into it, you get out. And I use that phrase a lot with our team of interns. I say, we have these tools at our disposal. It's important to use them, but it's important to remember that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And so you want to be mindful. You want to be good stewards of the prompting, I guess, is one way to put it.
That's an excellent analysis. If you use AI for strategic thinking, use AI if you're a business owner. There's 33 million of them in the country. If they would use AI to do strategic thinking on what their business activities are, their business plan is, what the marketing is, who their competition is, where they are, how much they price things, the AI can run all those traps for you. And imagine with 33 million businesses, if their profits went up 25% a year. I mean, how does that benefit the country? How does property values, hiring? So this is an incredible opportunity to treat it like it's going to help you with Shark Tanking, just to give it really quick tune-up. And it's very learnable, very quick, and it can also tell you where you can find other resources. So it's a nice fit to what you're describing. It's just a really great opportunity.
So that brings up a question for me as well, right? And I think this goes into this next section, AI and social impact. Can technology really solve some of these gaps, these social gaps and issues? The question is, I like to consider myself an expert prompter. I'm pretty good with using these tools and really getting out of them what I want. And I think a lot of that is really just understanding the machine, the pattern recognition that it operates off of, and getting familiar with that in a lot of practice, trial and error, to refine the way that you prompt. But when I think about using these tools, at like a municipal level or a state level within, you know, an agency to address some of these issues, it makes me want to take a step back and say, well, I wouldn't know how to do that. How do you balance, you know, this tool, this AI tool, with the weight and responsibility of addressing social issues that are going to impact real people in very serious ways. And you know, homelessness is one of those topics, right? Going into your book. I mean, the book, by the way, is really incredible. The way that you all like kind of brought together that conversation and talked about the prompts that you fed, and it was really interesting to like see that process of you working with the AI tool in you exploring these different issues in the conversation of eliminating homelessness. But how do you feel about, you know, municipal and state and other, you know, public agencies that are trying to integrate that into their process to take advantage of maybe limited resources that they have on the personnel side, but, you know, the added capacity of AI?
I'd like to start off with this question, and because there's still, you know, ethical concerns for AI. There's, you know, in terms of going economies of scale as well. There's privacy issues that need to be navigated if you're, you know, financial entities and the government. So with that said, we have to be conscious of that and the ethical concerns that we're going to stay on top of. At the basis of our book was just ideating on centers of excellence that are already out there that for one reason or the other did not continue. And we're just shedding light on measures that have been accomplished that could be scaled. You know, so, but we need to make sure that we understand that we're going into a territory that is going to involve controls, is going to have some risk involved, and some compliance factors. So, Kevin, I know you have a lot to hear that is going to be very beneficial, but I just want to lay that groundwork.
No, I was taking notes on your conversation. I would say as a footnote, though, Jose, the role you describe for yourself as a prompt AI engineer, that's a new position that's just been created across the country, making $250,000 a year.
Yeah. It's good to know I have a backup job.
If you needed it.
Yeah.
The thing about Mark and I have started to use AI because we do have, you know, a lot of national recognitions and awards, and you know, we were part of the team that transformed Austin, Texas, and generated a 239% return on investment, recruited and put performance contracts that created $15 billion worth of capital investment, 8,000 direct jobs, 125,000 indirect jobs. Average salary for the tech workers, 118,000. And so we worked the incentive system and figured out how to do this. And we thought, if we had the right intelligence, we could use this same incentive system to eliminate poverty in America. And what would be the return on investment if cities and counties and states had no poverty? What would the impact be? And so just one point is that the reason we selected homelessness for AI to help eliminate is because it's the smallest stratum and it's the worst part of poverty. It's disconnected. People don't know where the people are. It's children. It's people who are soldiers, who are families that are out of luck. It's kids jumping from car to home. We think and feel very strongly that solving this problem shows that you can solve the whole problem. So we started at the worst stratum of it, and it can be done. It can be done, and only now, because AI can connect all the parts. It can find all the flaws. It can find the opportunities. And most importantly, for people like us who are incredible successes with doing economic development for cities and states and countries, it shows you what the cash positive return on investment is for doing it, not just the savings, but the new taxes that are generated. There's no question that it saves Social Security, but then it does it by not just getting people out of poverty, but repositioning them to tackle the global marketplace, to be really shrewd, smart business people for America's future. So I think that this is a time where something's going to break loose.
Yeah. That to me is really interesting, right? Like the phrase like AI synergy comes to mind because I think AI, right, like can help us like intersect all of these spaces that benefit from us taking the financial resources and time to address such a large issue like homelessness, right? In a way that I would be surprised to try to find a particular research institution that could do all of that, right, by itself. And not to say that I don't think they have a role. Obviously, they have to do a lot of the heavy work to help us pull their particular research together to then compile into some of that like AI synergy. But there's a role for AI there, right? There's a value add in bringing all of these maybe non-conventional pieces together to see the broader strategy and plan, which is what you all did with this book.
And Jose, it's the same as we're going to tackle poverty and entrepreneurship. You're going to see in our upcoming guidebook on entrepreneurship, the backbone of our economy, our first responders of our economy, our small businesses. What if scenarios? What if the me, myself, and I, the solo entrepreneurs, increase their account to 1.5 with a part-timer? What kind of impact could that have on consumption, GDP, job creation, investing back in the communities? And so we're very truly excited to bring that out to the forefront because the small business economy has been the most resilient in terms of being first responders through crisis after crisis after crisis. And we frankly believe that small businesses are going to unite this country. So get ready. I mean, unleashing the great beast is also going to happen when it comes to the massive gaps that we have to close in entrepreneurship.
And it can be done. You mentioned, is there an institution that can do it? Is there, who's doing the research out there? One of the beautiful things about using AI is it uses at least 40 to 100 sources to answer every question. So one of the questions that we've answered for another piece that we're doing is, who teaches free courses in business so that the Gen X people, the Gen Z people, the Gen Alpha people, that people can tap in and get a quick tune-up for free. And there's so many of them. Harvard does it. The UK Open University does it. Stanford, where Mark was, does it. So there's the sources create a validation of the return on investment. And if you find gaps or you're trying to make sure that the pieces fit together, this really sheds a light on the existing systems in a positive way. And that opens it up to business. That opens it up to businesses because they need to be mobilized to take this under their stewardship. I think entrepreneurship is the way out of all of the doldrums that we have in dealing with poverty and homelessness. We need a much larger, more robust role for the private sector.
I think what this makes me think of as well is the process that we have gone through at ZETA as well, as a newer 501c3 organization, nonprofit organization. We have really, with all of our teams, looked critically at how we integrate some of these AI tools for our digital content, our video production, our scripting, our what else have we used it for? Taking a stab at different like writings that like we're trying to put together that we want some like additional thoughts around. We were just, as we were building out the team and I was, building out the administrative kind of side of the organization, and we were, getting a payroll system and all that set up. I remember I went to that meeting with those folks that we were meeting to set that up, and they said, yeah, we have this new tool and it integrates AI. And I was like, what the heck do you need AI for in payroll? And they're like, oh, well, it just you can play with it in your profile and it gives you, like toolkits for staff and guidebooks on like administrative things that are tailored to you and your vision and your, organization size and objectives. And I thought that, like, man, that's so cool. Like we're really seeing it integrated everywhere. And I genuinely believe, and I think it shows in our work, that it's just made us a lot more efficient, and allowed us to grow very quickly. And it's that openness, right? And I can't imagine what it does on the private side for entrepreneurs. I'm seeing it, but it's just incredible, right? Like how fast it's helping us move.
Oh yeah, imagine that. Mark's got an MBA, and so in certain areas he is just so superior to anything I know. Imagine that Gen Zs get Shark Tank like MBAs. I mean, that they just all of a sudden ramp up and they can compete with anybody in the world because they already know how to get connected, but now they know how to make money out of it. That's a really wonderful thing for America that we haven't seen before.
And you have a social conscience that is so necessary right now. And so to amp up your business acumen while being this force, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I admire Gen Z. And that's why I'm on this advisory board. Also, you both have catalyzed a thought. We've been talking about individuals, but it's also the responsibility of our instructors. And I'm talking from philanthropic instructors like myself to all across our educational platforms. We have to do a better job of amping up our game, whatever topic that we're discussing. There's some curriculums that are collecting dust that have been used for decades, and basically a case study is revised. We've got to shake all that up. And that's going to help us also with going to the masses that are underestimated, that don't have access points. It's also the responsibility of the trainers. And so I'm excited about the accountability that we can have with the educators, whether they're volunteer or paid.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point.
Mark was he was given a talk at the Clinton School to the professors and the graduate students who are like a huge wave of people trying to do public service in a real meaningful way. And they had prior experience with AI in a way that really was only about being alerted to it if students used it.
Yeah.
And one professor told Mark, if I had this 40 years ago, I'd have all these Pulitzer Prize winning people and all of these people who would be geniuses. And so Mark and I looked at each other and go, Gen Z.
Well, so that's an interesting topic, right? And I've done some education policy work, not that much, but I've worked on that intersection. And some of the folks on our board have that intersectional background of tech and the new integrations of tech and education. And that to me is really fascinating as well, because it's such a rapid shift, right? And teachers and universities and these educational institutions are having to rapidly adjust to, yes, like implement these checks to be able to make sure that students are still able to create authentic, organic, like self-created pieces of writing that are not just, AI generated. And so that has created this whole like kind of additional industry of like, how do we equip teachers and these instructors to identify what is AI generated? But then there's another piece there, which I think is really valuable, which is how do we integrate these tools as tools, as a part of that tool belt that we're helping students build, right? And I think, I don't know what like example we could point to, but I'm sure there was a comparison there with the internet, right? Maybe at first folks we're saying, you got to make sure you still know how to like research in the library with hard copy books. And I mean, it's a good thing that folks now, they understand maybe that they should. I think everyone should know how to go into a library and do some research, but they also, there's a demand that can't be ignored for knowing how to do online research, right? And I think that that the same is true with AI. I think we're seeing that response, and it's warranted and it's necessary that educators and these instructors, these institutional leaders, yes, are making sure folks still know how to operate without the tool, but are also encouraging the use, the mastery of these tools, right?
That's a good point. Take it one step further. Connect this knowledge to the economy. Find out how this can advance the generation, the individual's ability to make money. One of the fascinating studies that I was working on was Singapore. I was working with the OAS, and Singapore was, in the shadow of China, and their marketing strategy for the whole country was to turn out manufacturing jobs. And they got together all their business people and the CEOs, and they go, hey, this isn't working. We can't compete. So they switched. The CEOs and the educational people figured out that they would try digital. And all of a sudden, they became one of the top digital places in the world. They recently, all of the educators got together with the business people, and they're looking at AI, and they're looking at these things that are happening. And they're now teaching entrepreneurship to all of their kids, because they can survive in all these fields. They can still do creatives. They can do, cybersecurity. They can do logistics. They can do medicine. They can do defense departments. They can do everything if they got that shrewd business aspect. So I think you're right. Connecting education to the economy with this tool, man, that breaks it wide open.
Yeah. The last question I had on for this section, right, AI and that social impact, was if a city or state is looking at implementing AI to drive economic opportunities, drive prosperity, what are specific avenues to start with? And I think we've named a few, right? Education, workforce development, entrepreneurship, affordable housing. I mean, the list is there. I mean, I don't know if I could pick one to start with, but the benefit is easy to see, which is really exciting.
Mark and I talked about this a little bit, and obviously the governments are using it for transportation, for their systems of transportation, and they're trying to figure it out. What else do we use it for? But I think the missing ingredient for governments is to use it for economic development. You don't have to recruit Apple to move to your community like we did in Austin. I mean, that was great. It was a $14 million return on investment and $360 million capital investment, 3,600 jobs. But wouldn't it be better to take the 40,000 kids who were in poverty and turn them into a generation of Einsteins and Elon Musks? The greatest return on investment is in economic development, is not recruiting companies, but growing the talent base into small businesses and into entrepreneurs. That's where the return on investment is. Getting just 1 million kids who are not in entrepreneurship, getting them into it in just a modestly successful basis generates $1 trillion a year return on investment for America. $1 trillion a year. You could pay off the national debt with cash for that. But also you've got this army of brilliant young people who can compete in the global marketplaces and just do things. So I think the door is being kicked wide open for cities and counties and states.
And that's one of the most bipartisan issues that we have is our kids. And we can invest in our kids in this manner, no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from or socioeconomic background. Early and often, our kids are the key to solving some of these big problems.
Yeah.
So you're seeing entrepreneurship being introduced in academic environments and community colleges and universities as core planning components for graduation, but we should start in elementary school. Rather than have debates on some topics that we see that are happening now, why don't we introduce the concepts of entrepreneurship? I was raised, my parents met on the cotton fields as migrant farm workers, and they bootstrapped the welding business. That's how I got educated. I got educated on grit and tenacity. And over time, I acquired the education, which made all the difference in the world. But what if that was in the reverse? If I had that grit and tenacity and had that education earlier, whoa, I can only imagine what the end product would have been. But we don't have to imagine it anymore. We can apply it.
And
Yeah.
there's some specific things that the local governments can do immediately. Obviously, they can use AI to evaluate the workforce programs and the housing programs. You can look at what is your return on investment. I was on the Central Texas Workforce Board, and we had, I don't know, 100,000 people coming through the door getting trained. But on further analysis, it was a very small number that got jobs in the careers for which they were trained. For a reason that wasn't discovered until like 2 years later. The huge nursing program that they were running was turning out great qualified nurses, but a lot of them, a huge number of them, had infractions, criminal infractions for marijuana. So they couldn't actually get the jobs. So the AI can run analysis, not just like blockchain analysis, but can look program ROI. Same thing for housing. If you wanted to put together a housing trust fund, you'd have to know how to do it. You'd have to know what resources are out there, what are the realtors doing, what are the nonprofits doing, and ask AI to assemble it into a meaningful way where it was a sustainable building strategy that addressed the zoning and the NIMBY issues, but it all can be done. Workforce, housing, these kind of city planning problems and these really persistent issues that governments have can be radically improved with a huge return on investment and really solving the problems for so many people.
And I'd like to add something really quick because it also the philanthropic sector, it could shift also to look at some of these future city environments that could be great equalizers. So I think the philanthropic sector, the massive endowments that are in place could be redirected and make sure that we have these measurable outcomes and these analytics, predictive analytics, and make sure that they're tied to economic projections. I think that is a fueling key to all of our work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what this sounds to me is like we need to take this conversation on the road and start visiting some cities. I think there's a lot of work to do there to continue to educate folks on the ground on the application, right? The demystifying of a lot of these tools at that local level that can make a huge difference. I mean, I'm thinking about, the small town that I grew up in rural California that could use some additional support, and this tool facilitates it in a way that doesn't require them to, be in close proximity to a large municipal area or exhaust a lot of, finite resources. And so I think this is wonderful. I hope that we can and others can continue to amplify these opportunities specifically for local and state governments to continue to explore AI as a tool for them as they serve the public. And on that note, I want to move us over to a grounding section, which is talking about the risk factors, right, with AI. What's keeping business leaders up at night is the question here. And, I think what we can look at here to kind of dive into that is AI bias, right? Some of these documented biases around hiring, public policy, finance. At the end of the day, AI is fed by data, and data not always perfect. Reports are not always perfect and unbiased. And so my question for you all would be, how can business leaders and leaders across industries mitigate AI bias and ensure appropriate ethical use of AI and application?
Well, we need our public-private partnerships to come on, and everybody has to work together. And has to be democratized. We do have to work with the algorithms and the inputs to make sure that they're as respectful. Let's just come down to the word respect. Can we respect for all? So the algorithms, we have to make sure that the inputs are culturally competent. This country is a beautiful country of so many different types of people, of rich variety of cultures and complexity. So I think it's incumbent upon the PPPs, the public-private partnerships, to ensure that the algorithms, and this is for the people as well, because we got to rise up. We got to rise up in co-ops, resolve some of these access problems. That is going to be key. If one of these engines runs ahead of the others, we've got a big problem on our hands.
Yeah, I would say that there is bias in business, there's bias in government, that it's going to be hard to weed it out. You can't do it just with audits, although that's a big part of it. But I think that there's no bias in making a lot of money. If you make a lot of money and you're wealthy and you're organized and you've got some clout, then the goal of using AI for good is to increase prosperity, increase the prosperity in people who don't have it, especially people who could use it in a way that it's never used before, like the Gen Z or you all helping the Gen Alpha people. But I think that the bias is there, and like Mark says, the way to weed out a lot of the biases through public-private partnerships, where you nail down the performance measures and you have metrics that include the community values. All of the incentives that were done in Austin, Texas, included a business matrix of community values, and people got scored on that. And if they were going to get an incentive, it had to include, they had to get a B, an A or a B before they could even move forward. So you eliminate biases by doing that, as well as it's a reward system as well as a penalty system.
And I think about your book, right? I mean, you all, because that was a question that came up for me when I saw the title, right? How do we eliminate homelessness? The thought of, using a tool, again, maybe that a little bit of that fear of like, well, where's the human component? You met with and actually worked with a lot of community organizers on the ground, folks that were familiar with the issue, had personal experience working on homelessness, addressing these economic, gaps with communities, and used their expertise and their perspectives to help inform the way that you all were prompting and ultimately building that narrative for the book. I think that's the solution right there, is being, to borrow Mark's word, respectful, right? Respectful and responsible, making sure that you're doing your due diligence to bring in the perspectives to help with the prompting and the compiling and the refinement in a way that is representative, right? I think that's like all research, whether it's with AI or not. So that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, the people closest to the problems definitely have the best perspectives. Maybe they don't have all the answers, but they know what the problems are, and they can define where the gaps are in providing service. When we were in Austin, the city manager, Mark Ott, he kind of went to look at the homeless problem in the homeless shelters there. He went and lived with the homeless for a while to experience it. And he shared some of those, the issues and what he saw and who had what kind of issues. And until you really begin to reach out and find out what are the real issues at the ground level, you can't just say, here's a large number of homeless people, why don't they get a job? You have to look at it and you go, okay, there's maybe 200,000 children by one analysis. Another analysis by AI says there's 2.5 million kids in America, American kids who are homeless. How is that possible? So, we want to draw in as many perspectives as possible, have it evaluated and validated by AI, but also by people and boots on the ground to look at it. It's why we looked at all of the faith-based organizations. We looked at all of the, what the Salvation Army does. Who knew they helped 14 million people a year? Who knew that the new national plan that was approved in 2024, all in, which has $3.2 billion to go out and take care of a lot of the homelessness, has all the right goals. I mean, you look at it and it's really good, but it doesn't have any metrics or performance measures. So it's like it's a check to take care of the problem, but nothing to measure whether it's getting done. AI provides an enormous benefit there.
It's a great point, because I believe, and we believe strongly, that there's nothing like connection to the ground. And we've all seen, if you're over academic and over philosophical, it's not going to get anywhere these days. People need to feel, that you're genuine, you're transparent, you're connected to them. So if anything, what we're trying to do as well is we're trying to tool up and empower those boots on the ground. And providing these measurable outcomes really provide the sustainability, the consistency, and the projection of getting better and scaling these centers of excellence, all while maintaining that empathy and connection on the ground. Because what happens so often is these stellar programs with the connection on the ground don't have the KPIs that are necessary to, let's say, substantiate the funding requirements or be eligible for grant opportunities. So we want to be able to shake that up and give these folks a chance, because they know the constituency that they're serving. So we're very excited about that, tying economics and measurable outcomes to continuity and prosperity of some of these great programs that are out there that are dying, frankly.
At the end, we're all Americans. We have in our Constitution that everybody has a right to be happy. Some of us who are much older
happiness, but yes.
Yes, the pursuit of happiness. That's right.
Some of us, like that, being one of the few remaining baby boomers, I remember the nuns all took us to the airport to meet John F. Kennedy. And he came down and shook hands with everybody and was given the talk. But he was kind of testing out his speech where, ask what you can do for your country. To be an American, you have a responsibility to try and really do good, make things happen. And then this AI tool falls in our laps recently as us as economic development gurus. And we go, oh man, we're gonna use this and show a business argument that benefits Gen Z as the kind of lead in getting America on a whole different plane of economics. And I think it's going to happen. I think we're very close to having just a breakaway interest in doing it for business purposes. But as Mark said, really, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and because we're Americans, and we should have a heart. We should not accept that there could be 2.5 million kids on the street in America. That is not acceptable.
Yeah. Right. I think that's the call that really speaks over the caution, like the valid points that we need to proceed with caution, but we need to proceed in a way that we're going to ultimately still try to use the tools at our disposal to address the large social issues. On that note, another question, which is, with AI comes really good scams and really good deepfakes that are targeting communities like Gen Z and our aging Americans. And so,
are you talking about me?
I'm talking about a large community of folks
that are hitting seniors is unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm not gonna. You know what? We're gonna have to bring that conversation back at some point, because next month's webinar is gonna be on that topic, actually, online scams and how they disproportionately target and impact Gen Z and our aging Americans. So there is definitely timeliness here for that conversation, but folks will have to tune in March for that one. But on that note, right, like, what protections do you think need to be in place, right? I mean, we're seeing some federal legislation. I'll point out a wonderful bipartisan piece of legislation, the Take It Down Act, sponsored in the Senate by Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Amy Klobuchar, which seeks to create quick and rapid response that protects children and all individuals from these explicit, inappropriate deepfakes that are non-consensual images of people that, even though they're fake, cause real emotional damage and harm, right? So what other protections would you say need to be in place around some of these misuses of AI?
Well, it is so bad. I mean, you look at the hacks of our medical system now, the hacks of the Treasury Department, for God's sakes. They're just shut down at that Colonial Pipeline. According to all the research, it's going to be $1 trillion criminal enterprise every year fairly soon. It's that bad. It's just not Nigerian princes who you have to give your account to wire you money. It is. There's so many shrewd, fake kind of things that are happening that I think there needs to be some push to your generation to take the lead role, frankly, in developing cybersecurity systems, looking at it from the business side and then reverse engineering it, because people are doing it to make money, and find a way to not only use the rules that need to be created, but to be able to provide intelligence on it. I think that's another whole career move to find, your generation should be the James Bond of cybersecurity.
I like that phrasing. That's a good, we're going to steal that one for our programs.
Well, that's why I feel we have to work together. I mean, truly. Yeah. I mean, we've got to get our researchers in this ball game. Look what's happening with drone activity and how that's a factor in security and national security. It's the same here. This is a national security issue. It is very, very serious. And there's also capacity issues. We need to think about building our capacity of data warehouses, not just data centers. But in that, there's opportunities. There's opportunities for upskilling, workforce development, job security, building intergenerational wealth. So I think we've got to have that all-inclusive look at the risk along with the solutions and the economic incentives that are going to be provided, including upskilling and workforce development, that will keep this nation where it should be, at the very top. But we can't take it for granted. We're not invincible, and we got to stay competitive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, a lot of young folks would as well. My final question around this theme of, looking at maybe some of those risk factors or those obstacles to overcome. We got to talk about it. It's one of the most important issues, topics for Gen Z as a generation. Nature, the climate, taking care of our land, water, air. It's really important to our generation, right? It's consistently listed as one of the top 3 priorities, usually number 1 or 2, for the generation. So looking at AI, there is a massive energy consumption, right? Data centers consumed in 2022 alone 460 terawatts of electricity, which is more than the country of Saudi Arabia consumed in a whole year, in that same year. So how do we look at this emerging industry and think about balancing that innovation and all of the good that can come from that and sustainability, speaking to Gen Z?
Yeah, I'll start off there where I left off in terms of data warehouses, because there's some education that needs to happen between building the capacity of data centers and cloud infrastructures and data warehouses and actually business intelligence, including AI. In that, there could be huge opportunities to go into rural areas and redevelop communities where there's now financial institution deserts. I remember growing up in a farming community, and we had that bank as our institution, as our center. And many of our communities, those banks are leaving. we can redevelop communities around these opportunities of building this infrastructure so that we can afford the capability long term to leverage AI for good, like we're talking about. But right now we have a capacity issue. And so I also foresee that we can't work in silos. So what the federal government is doing, I think, has to be honeycomb to what the regional networks are doing, the state economies, the county, and the municipalities. It ain't always going to work out, but there are several states that can come together and provide an example. So anyhow, you raised a very, very, very scary, I'm just going to use that term, if we don't deal with our capacity issue, but if we have that opportunity to look at it holistically in terms of upskilling, workforce development, and building communities, especially rural communities and urban centers that are falling behind, frankly, in opportunity. This is our chance. And our school systems could get involved all the way down to elementary through the higher education at all levels, community colleges, undergraduate universities, and our graduate institutions.
There's a silver lining
to involve international as well. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, I think you're totally right, Mark. I think that we need to be alarmed. I think at the same time, there's a silver lining to this. This is like the perfect opportunity to have like a fresh look at the economics of this and look at it for how do we want to have a sustainable America. And so we know that we need a lot more energy, and we know we need a lot more water for these to power and address the data centers. So I'm in Atlanta, but in Georgia, they just opened 2 brand new nuclear power plants down near Savannah, and they're good for 50 years, and they've got all the protections, and they're developing a whole new awareness of them. There is a plan to start doing desalination plants in the oceans. There are private sector companies that are stepping up. Did you see 3 Mile Island is going to be repurposed with new nuclear technology, and it's going to be used to power data centers for Google. Mm-hmm. So I think if we incorporate these challenging demands in our strategic plan for America's future, we can accommodate AI's needs, but we should also do it to, as Mark said, to use it as a revitalization tool for the rural areas, to get fresh water, clean water, to get cheap energy, to give them access to AI and all of those tools. These things should be integrated comprehensively into an economic strategy, and then measure the return on investment. So it's not just saying, we've got this problem and somebody better solve it. There is, and we can ask AI if you want it, but I think that the obvious ones are that the data centers can be more efficient. They can use less power. They can use less water. I mean, that's, an obvious thing. But I think the opportunity is that we as Americans can look at this as a leap forward and look at the power that can provide cheap energy to the rural areas. It can provide clean water. It can provide all sorts of jobs that support the data centers. They don't hire many people, but the jobs to maintain them and to connect them to everything else, their distribution system is wonderful. So I didn't want to leave it on a totally negative note. I think this is a silver lining.
Well, and I'd also like to commend you all for your environmental conscience. I mean, this has so many threads of opportunity, including solving for food insecurity and all sorts of environmental concerns. And we also, I don't think there should be an issue with America being a role model for other countries around the world that are suffering right now. Why can't we share some of these breakthroughs with the rest of the world? And I know that this particular generation has that moral compass, and we need you more than ever.
I think about that question quite a bit, in part because of some of the work I've done in the past around conservation, energy transition work around land, water usage, understanding the preciousness of waters, particularly in the Southwest. But it is something that our generation cares about a lot, right? Is that sustainability piece. And you bring up nuclear. We've been following those investments on the part of tech, and we've also been seeing that tide shift, that conversation shift from both industry folks across the political spectrum and folks in the conservation space who are saying, there is a need to integrate the solutions that industry is looking towards right now to meet energy demands of this rapidly growing tech and broader conversations on our transition to cleaner energies. And that's something that I think it's important for folks to know, that it is being identified, it is being worked on. ZETA will certainly continue to build out our work around energy and the intersection of tech, while focusing in and centering Gen Z perspectives and values on sustainability and cleaner forms of energy. So there's a whole another conversation there that we could get into, but there's a lot of promise there, I guess, is what we're trying to all share.
Yeah, Jose, when you do economic development, everybody is attracted to where you've got low-cost power.
Yeah.
Labor force, low-cost land, but mostly it's really the power. And there's all sorts of studies that are about ready to break through. The U.S. Navy has been doing studies on undersea turbines to take advantage of tidal poles and the changing currents. And they haven't figured out how to connect the power to the cities, but it would power whole cities. But they can't run the lines through the coral reefs,
Mm-hmm.
And there are environmental impacts. But solar is having all sorts of wonderful breakthroughs. Yeah, so the transition to a clean energy, I hope, will be precipitated further and faster and accelerated because of the demand for these critically needed data centers and the AI that's going to be so important to us.
Yeah, that's a goal. That's certainly a goal. That would be really wonderful. I want to move us into our last section here, which is very forward-looking, right? AI and the future of leadership. How do we prepare the next generation? Been talking a lot about Gen Z, our priorities as a generation, our opportunities. If you were 22 today, how would you future-proof your career in an AI-dominated workforce?
Yeah, that's how wonderful would that be to have had, 1,000 PhDs working for me every 10 minutes whenever I had an idea to build a futuristic city, or run the eco-economics projects. If I was, and I went to engineering school, so I always, try to think about how you could be schooled in things that are real practical and that can be implemented. And I think as a city planner and as a director of economic development, and then I was a city planner, I really think that business skills, learning about the private sector, learning about how entrepreneurship works, to create a business reason to build cities that are futuristic. Most of the communities that try new things and succeed are wealthy. So there's a core of people who are creative and they've got money, and so they're willing to try it. So I think that's what I would like. I would love to build futuristic cities, even today, cities of the 21st century. And if I was going back 20 to 22, which is it's a big leap. Yeah, I would love it. I'd love to use AI, and I'd love to be able to use the knowledge of how businesses operate and apply that to the logic of the tax systems. Because every time you come up with an idea, everybody wants to know how's it going to be paid for. So I think that that's the logic that Mark and I have determined now by using AI. We've been able to calculate that eliminating homelessness, the lowest rung of poverty, the worst poverty in America, generates a $20 billion a year cash return on investment. So I wish I had that kind of knowledge 50 years ago.
And that's great. I mean, you stumped us on that one. So I'm about to be 54. So I'm going to take off these glasses and look you in the eye, generation. I think one of my secret sauces has been to building the aptitude of anticipation. So if I had that at 22 and had cultivated that and say, you know what, and use a little 48 laws of power, please look that up. There's a 5-minute recaps of that precious read. But I would say, I'm going to save you a heck of a lot of money. I'm going to be able to give you some analysis 3, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. I'm going to help you take care of whoever you're taking care of, products, service wise, in a more efficient way. And I'm going to elevate the customer experience. Are you interested? So those are things that I think about now. And now I have this tool, once again, as an intern, not my boss, multiple iterations, and also verifying the information that's coming back, and then making sure that it's personal. And by the way, I would go for the business membership. Invest in that because it tracks, your persona, if you will. So that if I had these tools at 22, oh my goodness, I start off with that. It's a total 48 laws of power concept. And in that way, I would gain leverage and also be able to get, I think, much quicker to my passion. You should be able to do what you love. You should be able to do what you love in your professional environment. And I wish I would have gotten there quicker. I don't have many regrets, but I wish I would have gotten here quicker. It doesn't mean that I'm not working around the clock with my business, but I'm having the time of my life. And that's why I wear this cap. And now it's a branding of my business, but I truly believe this. But this is a product of being an overcomer and being agile and having stamina. So anyhow, that's what I would have used to future-proof myself at 22.
Yeah. I love that, and I'm looking at the last of the questions here, and we've covered all of them actually at this point, and so I think what I want to do to close out the conversation here before we open it up to any questions from the audience is give you both an opportunity to just give some closing thoughts on AI, Gen Z, and any of the points that we covered in today's conversation that you would want folks to walk away with.
Well, first of all, Zeta, thank you. Thank you for your leadership role. I mean, what a group of a talented team that truly loves what they're doing. This country has issues right now, but I have to come back to the opportunity that we have. We still have the opportunity to be best in class. We still have the opportunity to leverage technology. And I have to thank Kevin he authored this book and he brought me in as a collaborator. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to save the taxpayer dollar. We're trying to save trillions of dollars. We're trying to leverage centers of excellence. We're trying to be transparent and connect with who we're serving. We're trying to solve the world's most prominent problems. We're trying to create stopgaps. And it's all coming from a place of respect, a respect for all, because that should be the fabric of what we're all about here in America and living the American dream. It might sound a bit Pollyanna-ish, does it? But we truly believe in what we're doing here. And we feel it's our obligation to answer the call that you've made, Gen Z. Overall, I don't want to overgeneralize, but you care. Overall, you care. You care about people. You care about the environment. And hopefully, through this experience, you've gained an understanding of the possibilities to unleash the economic throttle of AI so that we can bring that social conscious into practice. And I feel like that could bring this country together. And we need you more than ever today. and it's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, as well. I so enjoy working with Mark. He's been such a national leader advocating for good causes with his work at Commerce, his work with the Aspen Institute at Stanford. It's just really an honor to work with someone who is so concerned and also really gets things done. I would ask Gen Z to be the generation of Einsteins. I would ask you to really put the pedal to the metal and use AI to ramp up as fast as possible to get business skills. And to ask you to support creating a federal, state, and local tax breaks for businesses, for the 33 million businesses across the country. A tax break that could only be used if you provide mentorship, entrepreneurship, anything related to teaching how to own your own company and create careers that pay at least $100,000 a year. To mobilize the private sector and all 33 million businesses as fast as possible and give this generation, get it armed to be the vanguard in a very competitive hardball global marketplace. Speaking for my generation, we need you. The 60s needs the 2020s. I think it's so important, and we're really counting on you. Ask for those tax breaks. Mark and I, in the next book, we've run the calculations already, but it can be $24 trillion return on investment by getting America's kids into entrepreneurship. $24 trillion is a return on investment. So you think about all the other things a country can do or cities can do for economic development. Well, there's a lot of things. You can recruit companies, you can do certain sectors of the economy, and if one sector melts down, then you've got a diverse economy. You can use the creative sector, which we all love. You can do the digital. But a generation of entrepreneurs equipped to tackle anything, that's what America needs, and we need your help.
I want to thank you both so much for taking the time, really. And I think we're ending on a really wonderful note. Before I close this out, I do want to ask the team if there are any questions to help us out and maybe bring them forward so that we can engage with the audience here. And if not, I'll close this out.
Yeah, we actually have two questions from the audience. The first one, and you guys touched on this a bit earlier, so likely a follow-up. What are some strategies or ideas that we can implement to ensure that all families, especially underserved or minority communities, have equitable access to AI trainings? Is there a risk that some people may be economically harmed by AI? And if so, how can we as a community mitigate that negative impact as AI usage continues to develop?
Yeah, I think that there is a path, and it has to do with the pathways created by private business. We need to open up pathways for all the businesses to want to participate. I'm going to reference the Eisenhower Interstate Commerce Plan, which created a nationwide system of highway infrastructures and bridges. This is not too unlike that, but it's an intellectual infrastructure, and it can be done very quickly with AI. Kennedy got the country mobilized to get to the moon in 9 years. So I think that there is a path that can be opened up fairly quick, but it is a local elected officials path. I think that it's got to be done in such a way that a business argument for the return on investment can open up these pathways. I don't think it solves all the problems, but AI and entrepreneurship, that connections, that's rock solid for taking a generation of people and very quickly. The return on investment starts within a year, so it helps a lot of people get their kids out of poverty, their families out of poverty, or even if you're just the working poor, or it's like most of us that you have periods where you're just not making that much money. So I think using AI has this incredible value. It's a value add that can really make a big difference.
And I'd like to follow up and say that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we need to follow the decisioning tree, the decision matrix. Jose can tell you all about that as a very young member of the Independent School District Board. So city council, board of trustees at the community college level. We need to be more involved, more representative of who we're serving. And that requires a tool up in terms of an awareness of the process. Also, I love examples. So I love the work that I'm going to do with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, specifically with tooling up small businesses with AI and also looking at food security. So I think the whole public-private partnerships arena has to tool up themselves. We've talked a lot about individuals, but at the institutional level, we also have to embrace this technology, disrupt our systems, upskill those folks working, let's say, in smaller nonprofits to increase the efficacy of this programming. And then using these measurable outcomes and centers of excellence and not reinventing the wheel is going to ensure the lasting success and ultimately the buildup of the population that you spoke of, which is very, very important in your question. Thank you very much for providing it.
Yeah, I really love the question. Team, we have one more question?
Yeah, just one more. And you guys touched on this a little bit as well. How can AI be utilized to tackle issues in education, especially given the lack of education access in much of the world? Yeah. Also, how can we expand access to AI technologies to lower income communities across the world?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with that one, and then I have to defer to Kevin and all his experience. And by the way, it's an honor to work with you. 10 years ago, when I met you, I knew that I was in the company of brilliance. And I say that because you have a big heart, and you always are thinking about the future and how to elevate all communities and all of our children. So thank you, Kevin. I think I'm coming back to this theme that it's not only about the individuals adopting this technology, it's about our practitioners, it's about our volunteers, it's about our systems, our teachers, our educational frameworks. When it comes to entrepreneurship, no more weekend boot camps or 4-hour sessions with talking heads. It's about application. Walk away with the toolkit, with the how-to. Let's use repeat messaging as our friend. Let's make sure when we come back that you bring people who are involved in your business. If it's just a solo entrepreneur, bring that part-time bookkeeper with the vision that you're going to have a CFO at some point, even if it's fractional. There's opportunities here. So we have to disrupt the educational footprint. And that extends itself from the volunteer at the foundational level, at the community center level, all the way up to our PhDs. So I think the time is now. And if we don't leverage this opportunity, shame on us.
I agree with Mark. I'm an AI hawk, and also in economic development, you want to get things done immediately. And then you want to measure the return on investment as soon as possible. And I think internet poverty is a huge issue, so it's hard to get access to it if you don't have it at the schools. But I do think that there is an alternative pathway, and that is through the businesses themselves. I think that the more kids can get a business education through internships, through tours to businesses, to virtual academies, to science fairs, to this whole portfolio of things that are STEM related and entrepreneurship, junior achievement, and Girl Scout entrepreneurial program for girls, and the Girls Who Love Robots programs. There's thousands of these, but they're not scaled. They're not scaled up to make it possible for more than a few kids at any turn to get involved. I'm an advocate for property tax breaks to businesses that partner with them, to state tax benefits, to incentives that go directly to the nonprofits as long as they follow the performance measures. But I think to scale up kids into the system of business, whatever that looks like, does require a public-private partnership, does require that there has to be some kind of benefit for the businesses to be mobilized at a high level to do it. We launched something called the Einstein Project, which I've referred to in Austin, and it was about 20 high-tech companies that sat down and said that they would participate, some with incentives, property tax incentives like we gave to Apple and Facebook and Google and Visa and Samsung. They were all cash positive, and the companies, one stepped up, National Instruments stepped up and said that they would do 1,000 kids a year. Google said they would do 1,000 kids a year. These companies were stepping up left and right, and they were just the large ones. Well, the total population of kids in poverty in Austin was only 40,000. So if you could chip away at all of the high school juniors and seniors just with those companies and get on their resume that they had credentials and they had worked as part of an academy, or that they had this on their resume, you know that all evidence suggests that it boosts their income and gets the kids out of poverty very, very, very rapidly. There is the OAS organization in American States set up a virtual academy for entrepreneurship and futuristic technologies. And they did it with the hope to get 10,000 kids tutored for like a very short, like 2 weeks, get credited. Meta stepped up and sponsored it, paid for the whole thing, Meta, Facebook. And then 2 universities stepped up, including the University of Texas and the University of California, Riverside, and companies' CEOs all stepped up. And it was interesting because the population was targeted was kids in the Caribbean, but 25,000 kids applied and got into this virtual program, and over half of them were Americans. American kids wanted to do it. They wanted to become entrepreneurs. So AI offers an opportunity for virtual education, virtual business education, but it does require communities to get together, the neighborhood level parent-teacher organizations, chambers of commerce, faith-based organizations, any of the organizations that are already touching on this would be incredible allies for the person who called in with this question to mobilize the resources through a property tax break or through something to incentivize businesses to join by the thousand, to make it possible for the kids to immediately jump into something where it's practical, it's experiential learning, where they know how to make money. And I'm talking too long.
You're totally fine. I would.
Let me just add something to Kevin's thought. We've also got to mitigate these starts and stops. I mean, that's basically what's happened over time. There's been some wonderful programs. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Push egos aside. I mean, what you should be known for is taking something that already worked and make it better, rather than create a whole, white label for your own, self-interest. So, I mean, there's programs that have worked, and that's what we're trying to unveil here. No more starts and stops, especially if something was working and the community was benefiting.
Scale them up, provide them a source of funds. And that's through, I think, tax incentives.
So the way that I understand the question is how are we leveraging our educational institutions and our existing system to make sure that as many folks as possible across all socioeconomic backgrounds are getting exposed to these resources and tools. And I think you all have said this repeatedly, and I think it's really important. Public-private partnership. And I think what that means to me is recognizing that there are large companies that have a really important role to play, and smaller companies in communities that can help bring real application and utility to young people as they're trying to learn about some of these tools in the real world. And there's a lot of work that's going on by educational organizations, by school administrations, by educational leaders across all institutions. I guarantee it. That is looking at how are they integrating AI into curriculum? How are they preparing students to be, quantum computing engineers, right? And those things need to continue to happen everywhere. We need to open up those opportunities to all students so that everyone has the opportunity to pursue the American dream in the United States, whatever that means to them. But it takes everybody. It takes industry and it takes our educational institutions and systems to promote that next generation, right? I mean, we see that quite a bit in the work that we're doing on tech policy, where the conversation is very regularly across all these different tech industries. Where's the workforce going to come from? Where's the workforce going to come from for AI, for quantum computing, for energy shifts and transitions? Where's the workforce going to come from around broadband, maintenance, deployment, modernization? Where's that workforce going to come from? It's majority baby boomers, and they're retiring. And so industry and our educational systems and institutions need to keep working together and harder to make sure that our youth are channeled into these opportunities and equipped and understand these opportunities when they are presented with them, right?
There is no platform. There is no Indeed for kids. There is no industry to demand program for kids to know. Parents don't know what are the great careers that are out there, and they don't know about
they're shifting,
incentives,
right?
and they don't know about entrepreneurship. But I think you put your finger on it. The school systems they need a platform to work with the businesses, and the businesses need to be incentivized by thousands at a time to get involved and help lead the way on it. We got 33 million businesses in this country, and with some financial incentive for them to do it, they get new talent, they get a great branding, they get to know that they're helping America, and that they're making incredible savings on taxes and financial benefits for themselves and the community. But it does require community-based leadership, to talk to the schools and go, we need a relationship with 100 more businesses. So it does get back to the local elected officials taking a leadership role in looking at these issues and saying, are we going to do something different?
Yeah, and those governing bodies need to be representative of who we're serving. Only when that happens are we going to be able to move the needle. And so that is the cold, hard truth.
Yeah. All right, folks, I'm going to close this out here. Thank you all for joining us for today's conversation on AI for Good. This discussion made it clear that AI isn't just an abstract concept. It's already shaping economies, industries, and the way we approach global challenges. But as we have heard, its impact depends on how we use it, whether for good or not for good. As we wrap up, I want to invite you to our next Tech Talk in March, where we're going to dive into a different but equally urgent topic. As mentioned earlier, online scams targeting Gen Z and aging Americans, many of which are driven by AI. This will be an intergenerational conversation about the digital threats we all face and how we can protect ourselves and our communities. Keep an eye out for those details to come on our social platforms. Hope to see you there. Thank you again to our incredible speakers. You guys did a wonderful job. I'm sure we could keep this going for hours. And to all of you for being a part of this conversation. Let's keep pushing forward to ensure technology serves us all.